Good morning, everyone. It is February the 11th, 2025, and I realized after I put up the last video, and that was the importance of literacy, that I really needed to put a second part to this, because there's so much more to that story of what happened to me and how I learned to read, and the ordeal that I went through because of that grade 4 teacher. So I wanted to talk more about the hell, and it was pure hell that woman put me through, let me tell you. And I almost lost my life itself thanks to her. So I want to explain the story of what happened to me and why literacy ended up becoming so terribly important to me. So to complete where I left off in the last video, where, of course, all those caterpillars came down the sides of the desk and scared her to the point where she ran into my other grade 3 teacher in the hallway. She went down to complain to the principal. My grade 3 teacher came in, realized what was happening, and of course told us to get the caterpillars, open the windows, get the caterpillars out of the road. And then she went down and tried to straighten things down at the principal's office so I wouldn't get into trouble. So when she came back, the grade 4 teacher, boy, did I ever get it. And I mentioned in the last one that she opened that book with that petrified head of that man who from South America had been hanged, and you can see the rope around his neck. And she quite bluntly told me, this is what happens to bad children. And of course, I thought I was going to get hanged for all these caterpillars going up her leg after they escaped from my pencil case. And so I was quite frightened. The other kids were frightened. They didn't know what to think. They're looking at this picture too. And of course, everybody and the kids were all hearing about the adults hanging. And that was back in the 60s when Canada abolished hanging. And of course, the adults are all talking about this in whispers, and we're hearing this. So we're all scared that something bad is really going to happen to us. And so what she ended up doing, of course, was locking me in the cloakroom. And that traumatized me. And it's so easy to traumatize a child, because one of the things later in life, after being traumatized like that, I was terrified, and it all came back to me because I was watching a horror movie where this murderer was chasing this girl through the school, and she ended up locking herself in the cloakroom, and I saw myself back in that situation. So it brought back some trauma from from that period that I had to deal with. But the other things that she did was, I don't know, she was not only a bully, but sometimes the teachers seem to have someone that they really like to pick on and bully, and I seemed to be that person that was being picked on and bullied. So anyhow, there was, and I really tried to do hard and studied hard, and I studied for a spelling test, and I thought I did pretty good on it. After I handed it in, I ended up getting a 5 on it and a failure, and when everybody else checked it, I only had one spelling word wrong out of 15. I should not have failed that. So this is one of the things that she did to fail me. And she kept doing things like this to me. Then another thing was, I thought, oh, I'm going to impress her. I started doing a project, and we had what was called the old books of knowledge at the time. And I had, the last one was the index one to all the other whole series of the books. And so I left it in my desk, and she took it out of my desk, and she hid that on me for weeks till I got that back. Don't know why, but she did, and I was frantic. I thought my parents were going to be mad at me for losing that book because it was the important one to the rest of the books to the series of the books of knowledge at that time. I did get that back. Then it just kept escalating to the point that I was so nervous, so upset, I didn't want to go to school. My stomach was constantly upset. I felt like throwing up all the time. And what ended up happening was that my stomach started hurting one day, and I couldn't stop. I was just keeling over, and So she calls up my mother and tells my mother over the phone, Christy thinks she's sick. Really? So my mom came to check me, and my mom being a registered nurse, I was just as white as a sheet. She knew something was wrong. So she took me back home. She wondered what was wrong, if I was okay. She got me better. The pain stopped. Next week, it came back a bit. The school nurse this time checked me out and said there was nothing wrong with me. And by the next week, I was keeling over again. And again, this horrible teacher called my mother. And my mom came, picked me up, and she was really worried because I was even whiter than a sheet at this point. And so this was on the Friday. By Saturday, I was in even more pain, and she couldn't get a hold of her family doctor. He was out of town at the time. By Sunday, she knew she had to do something, and so she ended up calling an old doctor that she knew because she was a bit a nurse. It was one of her old country doctors she knew. He came in from the country, examined me, and all he said was, after examining me, get me bundled up, take me to the hospital. He was going to the hospital first to book an operating room right away. My appendix was bursting by this time. So he went in. Now my stomach sure shows the damage that was done because they had to use large clamps on me. So I've got quite a large scar for that particular situation that I found myself in. And he most likely saved my life because they really had to clean me out because I was really perforating. And of course, poison like that goes into your system, and it could have killed me. So I was 3 days at least before I woke up in the hospital. And the first person I saw, fortunately, was my mother's friends. Her friend had been a registered nurse, but now her 2 daughters were registered nurses. And so I woke up to them. They stayed with me for 24 hours, around the clock, until I got better. But when the doctor saw me, he just turned around, and one of the things he said, if I ever get my hands on that woman, and he never finished the sentence. He was so pissed off at what she did to me. And then instructions were, because I was in rough shape, I was not to do any really strenuous physical activity for a number of weeks. So, because I was athletic, even though I've told you in previous videos that due to dislocated hips as a baby, I'm lucky to be walking, but I ended up being quite athletic. So we had our day that we had, the classes all competed for the day, and this was in the schoolyard, all types of physical, skipping and whatever, high jumping, everything, because she wanted to win her class. That's just how important it was. When you stop and think about what she wanted our class to come in first prize. So she had me jumping all these different things. She had me crawling under chairs on a relay race, which I shouldn't have been doing. I was just about keeling over after that day, but she was so happy to go around with the first prize ribbon in her hands. And this is the way I was treated. So, of course, by the next year, I managed to get my grade 5 teacher, and I'm proud to say that was Mr. Rogers. I know he's now deceased. But although I have to admit, Mr. Rogers could have been like Mr. Rogers from Your Neighborhood there, the show, because that's the sort of person he was. And so when he realized that I had been in this grade 4 person's class, because I wasn't the only one that was suffering, there was a lot of kids that went through her class and were suffering. And when he saw how I was intrigued by all the insects and the bugs and the butterflies and that, he chose to lift me up, and he took me to the library, and he wanted me to do the project on the monarch butterfly, which I was so proud of, being able to look for the books, and I saw all the different pictures, and it was exciting to look in the books. So this got me going. To wanting to read more, and then of course my dad having the National Geographic, as well as a Reader's Digest, I just got myself stuck in my nose literally stuck into books. So I really learned how to read. I was reading to my grandfather too when he couldn't read at that point because of that eye disease that he got from the horses being a blacksmith for a year. So I used to sit and read stories to him as well, which was really nice to have that time to share with my grandfather. So I was really learning how to read. I was really coming forth, and excited being in Mr. Rogers' class. Now, I was really disappointed when I had to leave Mr. Rogers' class. But there's another footnote in this that's really great about Mr. Rogers. I, again, had Mr. Rogers, and that was in my grade 8 class. This time, he was my science teacher. And we were doing a project. He wanted to teach us about taxidermy. So we picked up a dead squirrel, and of course I was all excited about how do you cut open a squirrel and how do you make a stuffed animal, basically, but that had been once alive. So this was really exciting. So there was probably I think about 14. There was about maybe 13 boys that wanted to do it, and then there was one other girl that came in, thought she would be brave enough to see this. So it was quite something, because after he put the first cut in with the knife and the squirrel, and of course when opening it up, the smell can be very overwhelming. Anybody who's taken taxidermy or run into a squirrel or a dead animal, even not before they're even cut up, they do smell, and even we smell too, so before we have an autopsy on us. So this was really funny, because out of 12 of the boys were running to the bathroom, to the waste paper baskets as fast as they could. The other girl just about fainted beside me, and she was no good. So by the time that it ended up, there was I think it was like a one boy and myself. There was like 2 of us standing at the end of that. And so then I got more ridicule, because I'd always been bullied at school, and the kids told me, well, oh, there's the girl. She's the one that has the goat stomach. Oh yeah, she's really got a goat stomach. I don't know about a goat stomach or how I could take it. But I was really intrigued on learning. He really set me up for wanting to learn things. And as my mother said, even though I couldn't speak French, as long as I could read and write in English, then I had the whole world at my feet, which I did, because I could learn things on my own pace. I could see what was in the world. I traveled quite a bit of the world too. So I got to learn things, and being able, even though another language, sometimes it's hard to read, so I have to get somebody interpreted. But I saw so much. And for me, it's so important that our children learn to read and write. And like I said, that old Dick and Jane readers were great, but it's our teachers that I have to praise. When our teachers can make school fun to learn, and that's what Mr. Rogers did to me, then children learn so much easier. And the other thing is, a lot of children, my part of my learning disability was my audio perception on things, but learning to read and write. And so I learned visually, and being able to see things in books and touch things and having them right in front of me is a great way to learn. So when you look at the old Dick and Jane readers, when they had put up the scenes of what was going on, it was really, really great. So I kind of wanted to just explain a little bit more, just the hell that I was going through. And it also explains to me, and this was a public school here in Ottawa, growing up as a child, that this happened to me. And and then you talk about the residential schools. So I just want to briefly mention them before I pack up here, because this is what's happened. When I see what this teacher put me through, I can just imagine it. Like, I feel like I got a taste of what those poor children went through in residential schools. And if I, with my nerves and being so upset, ended up having to have my appendix out, and it was rupturing at the time, what kind of medical care were those children getting? I mean, how many people could have died the same way I did because of what was being done? So there's a lot of things to think about today. And I just appreciate living in a country where I'm free. But we still need to figure out how to teach our children how to read and write, so that they know the world around them. And that's one of the best ways to know the world around them, is being able to read and write. So I'm going to leave it there today, everyone. Take care. Be safe. Have a great day. And definitely we shall see. Watch your surroundings, and we'll see you soon. Bye.